Take me higher. Now I'm losing control.
Hey everyone, welcome to Living in the Question podcast. I'm Sadie.
And I'm Maddy.
And we are so happy to be here with you today and also resistant to it. So
Jumping right in.
Literally, we're just going to be real on this episode. Like, we are going to talk about resistance today and what it feels like when resistance shows up and how to be in it and how do we fix it and what do we do with it, right? Like, all of those pieces are so important in resistance and also just the awareness around what resistance is. So that's kind of what we want to dive into today.
I think first we could kind of start by defining what we mean by resistance. And I think for me, it's like that internal force that prevents me from like taking action or doing the thing, embracing change, moving forward. Like it's that internal part of you that just like, it's like, no, it fights it.
Yes.
It's trying to protect us, right? It comes from our ego.
Yeah, I really love that you just shared what it feels like because it's such a real thing to like feel it take over your body and just like, I don't know, there's just this moment of like uncomfortableness, extreme uncomfortableness. And it's like, okay, am I going to sit in this and like let myself feel it? Or like, what can I do to not feel it? Right.
Yeah.
This split moment where it's like, what choice are you going to make? And most of the time for me personally, I avoid it, which I think a lot of us do, right? And I'm aware I'm avoiding it. So I guess there's the shift and the healing in it. But, I don't know, that's very real for me. So do you want to share, Mad, like an experience instead of doing an awareness check-in today? Should we share like our own personal experiences of resistance in our lives? Like, what do we see resistance in? What are we resistant to? And also, I want everybody just to think about that for yourself because the awareness is the first part of shifting something. So,
yeah, I think when we decided this was going to be our topic at first, I was like, I can't think of anything I'm resistant to, which was funny now with reflection and recognizing all the things I'm resistant to. But like at first, I was like, I don't really feel like I am right now. And then I sat with it a little bit longer and I was like, oh, well, actually, there's quite a few things. So the first thing that came to mind for me is this resistance towards like really diving in and putting myself out there as far as creating my own business. There are easy tasks that I could do and steps I could be taking towards that feel so daunting and overwhelming. And I know that they aren't, but some part of me just puts it off continually, like, oh, I'll eventually do it. Oh, I procrastinate, I avoid it, I start doubting that I can do it. And I've just been recognizing the way that like resistance shows up for me and the way that I play small in my life. So I know that I could be creating really cool content and I want to, but then there's some part of me that like disses myself and like is like questions myself. I have like this self-doubt that I let cause me to not do it, right? So I prevent myself from doing these things that I know I'm totally capable of doing. And that for me is resistance.
Yeah, I love everything you just said because me too, ditto.
Yeah.
And for me personally, like, I love that you shared that it was hard for you to think about because that's resistance in itself, right? It's like resistance within the resistance. It's like your mind doesn't want to even let yourself think about what you're resistant to because then we're going to be shifting it and we don't want to. We want to stay in our safe bubble,
Yeah, true.
That is very real. It's like layers within layers, but that's like how real I think resistance is, not only for you and for me, but like for everybody. Like resistance is part of our lives, and like part of our growth and our shifting. And yeah, we'll go into that a little later. But for me, I feel like, well, a huge one is just to like creating healthy patterns for myself. I am so resistant to I will create the pattern. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I'm sure you guys have heard me say it, but like I'll create a pattern for a week of doing yoga and I feel so good and I'm doing so good. And then all of a sudden, because I'm doing good, I'm like, oh, I'm good now. And then I back off. And then I'm like, oh, here we go again. It's like this constant thing. Like I'm resistant to changing my patterns and to change. And like, I feel like 100% that's my ego just holding on, wanting to keep safe. Like, I don't know this other way of living. I can't be that way all the time. It's like the thoughts, right? Like you feel the resistance and then the thoughts start to kind of take over. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm gonna latch onto that one and avoid this time, right?
Well, and I think it's important to like emphasize we're talking about resistance from a spiritual perspective. So resistance shows up right when you're on the edge of transforming yourself. It's right when you know things are going to switch, you're going to flip the switch on life. And like, that's why it shows up because you are right there. You are going to expand, you're going to grow, you're going to align better with what's meant for you. But it's so scary to change.
Right. I was reading this article last night about resistance, and something that he said is like resistance comes from like our unwillingness to take action when we're called to do so. Can you feel into that? Like, I think I need to say it again because it's deep, but like resistance basically comes from this place in us that's like unwilling to make the change. And like, even if we're aware of it, we're feeling like called to make the change, right? It's like, it's this calling for yourself to like, oh, like maybe your guides are talking to you in that moment, right? Of like, let me like take this moment to truly shift and change. And we just decide not to. It's like the action. It's the action, right? Like making sure that we act. So I just feel like as humans, it's natural for us to prefer to let our ego take control and be safe and comfortable in what already is than to go into the uncomfortable and like
Oh, totally.
there. Yeah. So everybody have compassion for yourselves too. Like as we're talking about these things that we have resistant to and how much we hate it, whatever, like have compassion for that part of you that wants to keep yourself safe. Like you're normal and it's okay, right? So I just want to bring that little reminder in because it's easy to get down on yourself about the things you can't do, right? Or you feel you can't.
Well, and I think like what came to mind is if you've ever seen a friend or yourself been in like a relationship where it was an unhealthy relationship, right? I'm thinking of actually one of our friends from college. She was always dating people who were totally toxic and just mean. And it just seems so simple from the outside perspective to be like, leave this dude, you know, what are you doing? He makes you miserable every day. But it is that comfort. It's the fear of the unknown. What will it be like for me to be alone? What will my life be like without him,
Mm.
without these patterns, you know? It is that like staying stuck in what's comfortable. And I've totally done that in my own life, in relationships and jobs. Yes, I want to make a shift and I know that I'm meant for so much more than this career, but it's more comfortable to stay where I know what to expect every day going into work, right?
Yeah, and where you don't have to step into, yeah, the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's so hard. Like that is freaking life. Like having to be uncomfortable and accept change and like we want to resist it so bad. And it's like
I don't think we want to, but I think it's hard not
innate.
to.
Yes, it's innate in us, right? Like we all have an
Mhm.
ego and like egos like just do that and like it's okay. It's just part of
Mhm.
us. But also if we can like transform that into something deeper. I just truly feel like resistance is like the universe's way of giving us a way to transform. It's showing
Yeah.
up to be like, here, can you transform and be better?
Yes.
Giving you this gift. But like it feels uncomfortable. So we got to like recognize when it shows up. And I just feel like that simple recognition of, oh, this is resistance doesn't let you get stuck in the thought spiral.
And I think what you're saying is perfect. It's like don't demonize your resistance. See it as like a spiritual teacher. Like
Mm.
there's so many lessons to learn from your resistance. And I think that we can do that by like recognizing that it forces us to face our fears and our limitations. It
Mm.
helps us grow to be in alignment with who we want to be and our higher purpose
Right.
if we can lean into it. But I think a lot of times we judge ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard not to judge yourself when you know you should do the thing and then you don't do it.
Exactly. That's the hardest thing ever.
Mhm.
Like this thing's coming up, I know, and I even know it would make me feel good if I did it. Like, what's the resistance to feeling good? You know, like for me personally, that's so real. So
Yep.
I kind of want to talk about like when it comes up, like what do we do with it? How do we shake it? How do we like move it around, maybe do some physical.
Mhm.
Literally last night, right before we were going to record the podcast, we were supposed to record last night, you guys. And it was so funny because we both sat down to do the resistance episode and had like immediately got tired, like drained, like no thoughts were coming, like all the resistance was right there. And I was like, Maddie, maybe this just means we need to just jump in and do it. And guess what we did? We decided to do it today because that was the healthier option for us at the time. But also
Yep.
that was resistance showing up of like, oh, hey, But before we did our episode, I was just feeling like super, like a lot of anxiety and just like resistance to like thinking about the resistance and like doing it. I don't know. I was just in it. Right. And also, it doesn't help that I'm going to school this weekend and I'm doing school for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And all we've talked about today is the resistance. How do we like not get caught by it? So it's all
Mhm.
showing up for a reason. But I truly feel like yesterday before we recorded, I was all like stressed and anxious. I didn't know what to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to move this energy through my body. So I took the dogs on a walk and they pissed me off the whole walk, but I definitely exerted some energy and was able
Mhm.
to come back and be like, oh, okay. Like I moved it, right? Like we have to
Yes.
let it shift in some way, and moving your body is a huge way that's scientifically proven will move energy through your body, right?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing example because I think if you do that first,
Mm.
then you're kind of allowing more space for you to process the emotions, process the thoughts, process why like you're being held back or what it is on a deeper level. Because a lot of times, okay, it shows up as anxiety. Like, what's the layer below that?
Yeah, is that I have to
I
acknowledge
think
I have resistance, like probably that's a big one,
that's
even though I already
probably,
know I have it. Like what the hell is that
yeah.
about?
Yeah. I think you can also like ask your guides or ask for guidance from the universe to like, how can I release this? It's not serving me anymore. I know that, but like, how can I let it go? Because that's hard to do. Like, my girlfriend who's moving to Portland now, like, she was being told by her guides, like, it is time for you to leave Salt Lake City. It is time for you to go and heal, get away from these people who've caused you trauma. You're too responsible for your family and everyone leans on you like a crutch. And as soon as she was just about to listen, all this resistance came up. Like all these fires were set off, little fires everywhere.
Yeah,
But
like
she
she's
pushed
about
through.
to leave. Is that what you're saying as she is about to leave?
Well, just committing to leaving. Like, okay, I'm gonna break my lease. Okay, like my family has to figure out new situation. There was so many things that came up and the way people showed up for her too, or like her mom being upset that she's leaving, right? All these different ways resistance showed up for her, but she persevered. And I know that it's gonna be worth it for her because she's in alignment with what's best for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's another part of it. You'll see resistance that it's not even within you. It will be like resistance outside of you when you're like trying to shift or
Happening
change.
to you. It's like
Mhm.
this, like things start coming at you, It's
Yeah.
synchronicities in a different way. It's like, ah,
But I feel you and I have like recognized that a lot within ourselves, like when that's happened, when we're like, okay, I'm making this conscious choice to grow. And it's like scary because things will come at you, but then it's worth it in the end.
mm-hmm, for sure. It's always worth it in the end. That's the thing. Because I think that's like what you have to hold on to, right? Like when it comes up. So I wrote this little thing and it just says, we need to allow ourselves to be in the resistance when we notice it's showing up, and then allow yourself to meet it. Notice it's there and meet it. Get up close and personal with it all along, being conscious that it's there. And then this practice will ease the tension a little bit. And then you back off. You back off and take a deep breath and then meet it again with like a fresh, new perspective. Like being able to give the space of like, oh, this is too much. I'm starting to feel it. This is stressful. And then like, I know it's stressful. I know what this is. Let me like put it on a shelf for a second, take a few deep breaths, and then like, okay, I'm coming
Mhm.
back in to meet you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it pulls you in a whole different way. And like, I don't know. I feel like you'll still have those thoughts, right? Like the thoughts will still start coming, but when you can like give it a little bit of space, when you know what it is, come back and then meet it, right?
Well, and what I'm hearing you say is surrender. Like, if we can practice surrendering to what's coming up, to the flow of life and letting it unfold as it will, you let go of that resistance, right? Because you're not clinging so tightly to what you want it to be, what it used to be, who you used to be. Once you let go, we stop fighting it, then there's more flow,
That's very
more
true.
energy towards transformation because you're not focusing and channeling all your energy towards staying the same. Like when you release, so many beautiful moments have happened in my life because I let go. They say let go and let God. Okay, maybe you call the universe, God, source, guides, whatever you look to, like trust that it isn't unfolding for your highest good.
Right. And it's showing up so you can take the nourishment from it, right? And like let it be. So, yeah, I really love that. I want to talk about the piece though of like, yes, let go too. Like it's so important to let go, right? And surrender. But then I also want to mention like you don't have to push yourself so hard, right? Like the little backing off I'm talking about is like give yourself a little bit of compassion that this is really freaking uncomfortable and I want to run away and I want to do everything else other than meet this right now. And then I just feel like it's important not to push yourself so much to do it because then you're not going to get to it. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's
Not
interesting you're saying that because
having
I agree, but I also think that people don't transform sometimes because they take on that attitude. Oh, I'll do it gradually. So I hung out with a girlfriend yesterday. She's
right.
been hanging out with, a lot of times I'm talking about relationships, but it's very prevalent, I think, resistance. But she's been hanging out with him for a year and he is not good for her. She's like, we don't connect really at all. We just like hook up and we're just kind of each other's like filler person. Like we don't want to be alone, so we're with somebody, whatever. And she's like, well, I'm just gonna slowly back away and slowly stop hanging out. She's not going to because the last time I hung out with her, she said the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like sometimes you just have to be honest with yourself and just genuinely like release it. Just let it go. I know that seems harder, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's way easier,
I
at
guess
least in my own life when I've like just committed to the thing and just decided, and that was not an easy decision, but like
yeah.
I'm just gonna see there's like this ease of I'm just gonna let go and see what happens, releasing that. So for me, what's coming up is I'm thinking about my previous relationship. I was in it for a really long time. It was good.
Funny because I
I was
thought
in a
about that
healthy,
earlier.
loving, kind, what?
Is that funny because I thought about that earlier too.
Yeah. Like I
So
was in a good relationship. There was nothing to complain about it, but I wasn't fully satisfied. And for honestly like years, I was just like, well, oh, I don't know. Like I'm always in a toss up. What might I do? What should I do? You saw me through it. Like, but then once I just kind of was like, I am going to step away. Whatever happens, happens. That's what I'm going with. My life shifted so much, so fast. Like because I had the mental space, the physical space, the time
yeah.
to let my life transform. And I think that like if you can just let yourself surrender, and I love that word because it feels different than like letting go. It's not like, oh, like it's gone.
Yeah.
With surrender, it's like, oh, I'm releasing it to the universe so that I can be held, so that I can be carried through this time, trusting and knowing that things will be even better for me. So the paradox of resistance is the more we resist something, the more it is showing us where we need to grow in our lives.
Yes.
And I think about examples for me where like I pushed so hard against something and it was even more in my face. So then it was like it was doubly hard for me, right? Like I know the thing I should do and I'm not doing it, so I'm ashamed of myself for not doing the thing.
Right.
And when I used to do sales, we would say this in the morning, like, choose your hard. And
Hmm.
I love that. It's like, okay, it's hard to be poor and it's hard to struggle through life and it's hard to ask for help, but it's also hard to go, for me, this was the example, like it was hard to go knock doors and it was hard to be rejected by people and have people get mad at you and explain yourself and walk around in the 105-degree heat. But what heart are you going to choose for yourself? And I
Yes.
just love that. Like I think about that still, like,
Mm,
okay, it's hard to get up and go hiking when I am more comfortable laying here on the couch and watching my favorite show. But it's also hard for me to lay here knowing that my body needs movement and I want to go enjoy the fall colors.
my grandma
So
always,
yesterday I got off my ass and I went hiking,
yay.
and it that itself was like a shift in my energy, because guess what? Today I want to go do it again.
Yep.
Whereas yesterday I wanted to just lay on the couch, and I probably would want to do that again today if I hadn't
Right. So
taken action.
mm, I love what you just said about choose your heart. Like, can you imagine if you woke up every morning with a note on your mirror that says choose your heart today? Like, holy shit, you know? That's beautiful. I really love that. And it reminded me of the specific memory of my grandma. When we were little, we would always be like, I can't do this. This is hard. And she'd say, don't say hard, say challenging. Just hear her. Every time I say something's hard, don't say hard, say challenging, and challenges are good. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
damn, that's, ooh, I just got full body chills. That's some freaking wisdom right there, you know? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, choose your hard. And also, it's not hard, it's challenging. Shift
Mhm.
wording of like,
That's so nice.
it's challenging and I can complete challenges. They might be a little tough, right? But like, I can do that. I don't know.
Mhm.
Makes it more doable.
Well, and we like to challenge ourselves as human beings. Like yesterday, I was talking with my friend and I was like talking about hiking and how I kept pushing myself. And that, honestly, I was in some of the best shape of my life because I just wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to beat my last time. I wanted to go harder, faster. And when you view things like what's coming up in your life as a challenge, it builds this confidence because you
Yeah.
do the thing that needs to be done.
Yeah, I really love that.
I
Right.
love the quote, like, everything worthwhile is uphill, because
Mm-hmm.
it's true. And I feel like I always think of that when I'm hiking, because it's like,
Right.
oh, trudging, I'm trudging, I'm trudging. And then you're like at the top, and it's just like I just did that. It's not just for the view, the vast view or anything. It's like, I worked hard.
Can I read
I
a quote that
pushed.
I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay.
Please do.
There's just a quote that I screenshotted in this article I was reading, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Okay, so it's from Seth Godin, and he said, when you complain to me that you're feeling resistance, I don't feel bad for you. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled because the resistance isn't like a sprained ankle or some other malady we seek to avoid when working out. The resistance is the shadow of art. No art, no resistance. Isn't that freaking beautiful? Like
Mhm.
nobody ever created anything beautiful from sitting on the couch and not following the feeling, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. So I love that we're talking about that. And I don't know. I also feel like too, I just want to say that like when you're opening yourself to like let go and like accept resistance and notice it showing up, all those things, do it with an open heart because I think that piece is very important. Just like coming into your heart space and reminding yourself to like come from the heart and like open a little, like let me just open to this because very specific piece of resistance for me is fear, like so much fear. I'm scared, like I don't know, I'm scared, like all of that comes up for me, right? And so I feel like when I've done that, like when I'm feeling so scared to like touch it and be in the whatever it is, be in the uncomfortable, like do the thing,
Mhm.
your heart and reminding yourself like, oh, this isn't so scary. Like it's okay, you know? And giving yourself a little bit of that love and opening your heart to it really does help you enter into it in a different space and in a more open way where you actually can let go. You're not just
Mhm.
telling yourself to let go. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like this different thing where it's like more embodied, right? And then I also feel like after you do the thing that you are resistant to, it's just so freeing and it reminds you that, oh, this actually isn't scary. You didn't
Mhm.
die. Like I didn't just die or get injured. Like I just had feelings and thoughts come up and that's literally it. it's not that deep, you know?
Mm. I had a roommate who always said it's not that deep. And I like that's
Mm,
kind of a thing, a phrase that people throw around. I loved it because it's true.
yeah.
Like most things just aren't that deep. Like we take things too seriously and we let ourselves spiral. We create anxieties about things. And if we just do the damn thing, like you're gonna have so much better experiences. You're
Mhm.
gonna have a better life.
Right. Yep. You
But I
will.
do think it's like, yeah, this attachment to our thoughts about something. Like I know sometimes when I've been trying to process something like talking to you, it feels like I'm like, well, you don't understand how much it's affecting me. But then like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, she was right. Like it's not
Yeah.
that big of a deal. But to me, I have
But
created this monster in my head.
it's because we attach emotion to our thoughts. They come up and we are unconsciously attaching the emotion to that thought and what it feels like to think about it. And it's
Mm,
like, oh wait, actually, that was just a thought. Like I don't have to
yeah.
attach anything to it. Like it's just passing by, you know, but I also think it's normal. Like me too.
Oh yeah.
Not all the
We
time, we
all
all do. It's normal. Yeah. So I don't know. I love everything we're talking about. And I truly believe that every single one of you can shift from being resistance's toy and controlling your own resistance. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
truly believe that we all can do that if we just take like conscious action to shift the way we're operating, right? Like tell yourself it's okay to change it up a little bit and like change is good and don't
Yes.
say hard, say challenging, you know?
Yes.
All that stuff. Like these little tiny nuggets can help you in those moments. So
Hmm. I want to share an affirmation really quick. So
that
I'm just gonna read it out loud. I recognize resistance as a guide, pointing me toward the areas of my life where I am ready to grow. I
mm,
trust the process and embrace the lessons it brings.
mm. Will you read it one more time?
I recognize resistance as a guide, pointing me toward the areas of my life where I am ready to grow. I trust the process and embrace the lessons it brings.
Mm,
I love it because it's like emphasizing that you are ready to grow now. You know,
mm,
it's like this, it's kind of like a positive shift of like, I am ready to grow. I am capable of this
mm. Right.
rather than I'm fighting this thing. Like I am ready. And that's what this is telling me.
Yep. And also, a lot of the time, that's like your intuition too, you know? So remember that, like, your intuitive self is giving you the resistance. The part of you that's connected, right, to the universe and the world is giving you this
Mhm.
resistance to tell you, come on, let's make a little shift.
Yep.
Like, we need to shift in this area or change or accept something new and let yourself be there. You can have such a beautiful life if you do, you know? So there's this little part of this article I'm going to read to close us out.
Okay.
You have anything else you want to say, Matt?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. So it says it's from Habash and it's an article on awakeningself.com. And at the end of his article, he just closes it out and he says, so when you discover the resistance arising on your mat or at your desk, take some time to soften into it, meet it, and get to know it. It is like Spirit's gentle text message. Hey, can you please pay attention? Can you stop long enough to feel this and listen? Trust that as you do, a new transformed life reveals itself to you in powerful and magical ways. I love that. Thanks for listening, you guys. Bye.
Bye.